Okay, I welcome you once again to today's training. And like I said last week, we'll be looking at Django today. And I would like to advise again that those of us who haven't yet installed our virtual or created our virtual environment, let's do so before trying to continue with this particular bits of the training. Okay, so to begin with, we are looking at Django, right? So Django is Python's framework for building web applications. So if you are developing if you want to develop a program or a site or application in Python, and then you would most probably be looking at Django. If not Django, there are other frameworks like Fast API that also helps in doing so. Yeah, but we are looking at Django today. So Django is just a framework that allows Python developers or Python programmers to build web applications online. Okay. Now, for us to be able to work with Django, we first have to install Django. But before we also install the Django, we have something we call virtual environment. A virtual environment is more like you creating an isolated environment where you would want to do something. And the reason why we are creating a virtual environment is because there are some modules or libraries or dependencies that we don't want to have in conflict. So I might have Python 2 and 3 both on this machine. But because I want to use Python 3, I must create a virtual environment so that I have Python 3 dependencies over there, and then I have to create another one where I'll have Python 2 dependencies over there, so that these two dependencies do not conflict. Otherwise, it might break or crash your system or your program that you want to run. So let me create a virtual environment. Okay, so I can do. Wait. So I'm guessing you guys have already created your virtual environment, right? That's good. So I can say make virtual environment. What do I call the virtual environment? Let's see. Geo. Okay, so my virtual environment is created. So once you, we have different ways of accessing your virtual environment. I am using virtual environment wrapper, so I'm able to just do virtual env, geo, make virtual env, then geo env, and then I'll be able to create a new virtual environment called geo env. If you're on Windows or you are using the normal repository, then you have to go into your virtual env, then you go into your activate folder, then there is some env which you have to work with. That's if I remember the part, but yeah, I think that's it. There's an env file that you have to activate. Okay, so once it is activated, so this is our virtual environment. So within this virtual environment, an isolated container where we want to put all the files and dependencies that we want to use for the website development. We'll keep it in here. So then we'll start installing them. So we can do pipe. Because you are using Python, pipe comes with Python, and we use pipe as it's more of like a library that allows us to install Python libraries. So we use pipe and then we call the install. Then want to install Django first. So because we don't have Django in here, it is downloading Django and it is installing Django within this virtual environment. So now we have Django. The next thing we want to install is we want to do by install. We want to install PsychoPG. Then we want to install PsychoPG2. So PsychoPG is also a library. So this library allows us to be able to interact with our PostgreSDB. So since our PostgreSDB is a standalone database, it's independent on itself. We want to be able to have access to the PostgreSDB from our Django framework. So we will use the library PsychoPG to be able to act as an intermediary and help us connect to our PostgreSDB. Let's see. Okay. So let me search it online by install PsychoPG.
P2 instead of PG.
Come again.
I think you wrote P2 instead of PG2.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. All right. Thanks. All right, so we've installed our Django and our PsychoPG. All right. Now the next thing we want to do is, now we have our Django framework, and then we have our library, which will allow us to connect to our PostgreSDB. So the next thing we want to do is we want to start our Django project. So since we have Django now, we can use Django admin. Then we do start projects. Then the next thing that counts is our project name. So I want to let's create a project called feature collector. All right, okay. Django admin start project feature collector. Okay. So now we've created our application. We've named it feature collector. So the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to move into that project, and then we want to create an app within that project. So for us to be able to create an app within the project, we first have to navigate into the project. Then once we are inside the project, what we want to do is we want to use, let's go inside the project, let's see something. Now, when we enter into the feature collector, we have manage.py. So manage.py is a thing wrapper around the Django admin that allows you to be able to perform administrative functions within your Django project. So the manage.py, this manage.py just stands for management. It allows you to manage your project. So we use the manager Python manage.py, and then we are saying we want to start an app. And then the next thing is, what is the name of the app that we want to start? We want to call the name collector. So you realize we have a collector created in here. So we've created a project feature collector, and then we have an app in here called collector. Now, based on what you want to do, you might want to create numerous applications within the same project. You do the same thing. Python manage.py startup, then you add your app name, so you can have multiple apps within one project. All right. Now that we've created our application, for us to be able to see if what we've done is working, we do Python manage.py, we run the server. So once we do this, automatically a db.sqlite is created here. This becomes much more of like an automatic database that is comes with the Django. So if you don't want to use the SQLite database, then you change it to your preferred database. So the moment you run it, it creates the DB for you. Now we want to access the site. So you just copy this URL and then paste it into your browser. So I'm just going to open that link, and then we have our Django app running. But because we've not done anything, there's nothing to preview. The only thing we can see currently is just the Django interface. So this is telling us that everything is working currently, and then we can move on. Okay, so let's go on then. The moment we have this running now, the next thing we want to look at is we want to now customize the boilerplate that the Django framework comes with to our preferred system. So the first thing we want to look at is the settings.py. So I open my Sublime text, then I copy. I'm just going to drag my app into the Sublime text, my project. So I have my project showing over here. Okay, so usually this is how your project is going to look. You have your project name over here as a parent folder, and then you have your child folders in here. Now the first thing, your settings.py is going to be within your project folder name. So this is the root folder, and always when you create an app, when you create a project, it's going to create a duplicate name for the root, for the project name. So I have a project name here, and then I have a duplicate in here. So what Django is trying to tell you is that you have this project. Now this folder contains the configuration files for this particular project. So once you create your own applications and you want to edit the configuration files, look for the same name of the project, and then you have the configuration files down there. So you have the configuration files in here. The WSGI and then the ASGI are usually for when you want to deploy your application to production. But so for now, we will not look at them. But the two things we'll be looking at is the URLs.py and then the settings.py. So we have some boilerplate code in here. All right. So the first thing we want to put in here is we want to import OS.
Please, can you increase the font size?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
I hope this is okay. Okay.
Yes, thanks.
All right. So we've opened our project. The first thing we want to look at is we want to configure our configurations to our preferred setup. So we import OS. OS is just saying that we want to have access to our operating system. So the operating system over here is talking about your system, your machine. So we want to be able to communicate with your machine. So once we import that, we come down here to applications. When we created this project, we created an application called Connector. So the applications, you come down here, and then we put Connector here. Then you save it. You come down here. Then once you come down here, we have base directory. Base directory is saying that it's written over here. So it builds a path inside a project like this. So what this base directory gives us, it gives us the path to our root directory. So wherever this project is going to be on your system, this base directory is going to give you the path for this project, as in the path within which the project lies. So the next thing is, so we imported OS, and then we dealt with the app. We made sure that the app we had created we have inserted it into the installed apps. So we come down to our templates. So our templates, when you talk of the templates, we are talking of the HTML stuff that we'll be using. And so this template is just asking for the path that will be for the part where we will be keeping our HTML documents. So for us to be able to get that, we'll have to be able to tell the system to go into the root directory and then to go and find templates within the root directory or the root folder. So now we are saying, okay, you should go into the system, operating system, and then it should get the paths, and then we want to join some paths. Now the path that we want to join is the base directory, and then we want to join the base directory to a folder called templates. We haven't created this folder yet, but we are setting this up. Then once we've set it up, then we can create our folder. So we've created our folder directory now. So we go down. So in here, I was talking about a database that Django automatically comes with. So you realize we have db.sqlite, and then the base directory, which I'm saying is the root directory or is the root folder, is the folder of our project. So you realize that once we started the manage.py runs server, a db.sqlite was created within the parent directory. So we don't want to use db.sqlite because SQLite does not, it doesn't really support spatial data. Postgres does. So we'll have to pull or create a, we are going to create a connection to the Postgres database. So with that, I'm not going to type everything out. I have it over here. I'm just going to copy it. And then I come to the settings, and then I replace this with it. So this over here is talking of our database configuration. So I'm saying that you should create a database. Now, what are the details within the database? I'm saying that the engine should be give me a minute. Somebody just sent a message. Please, can you run over the process starting from Sublime Text? Because of the limited time, the video is being recorded. So when you say run over the process, what exactly are you talking about? Maybe I can just do some short recap. So John, what do you mean run over the process?
I meant when you open the Sublime Text and brought in the feature collector, I think there are some things you initiated within the Python script.
Okay. So you are saying when I ran the Sublime Text, there was something I initiated?
Yeah, there's some things you adjusted within the script. I saw.
Oh yeah, so I'm saying the moment you okay, so this to do app. Okay, let me just take this whole thing. So I'm saying you put your project into Sublime Text. It's an empty project like this. So you open your project. The moment you open your project, I'm saying that you are going to see feature collector, and you realize that the name of the project is the same as the name of the folder having the configuration files. And I'm saying what this means is that when you see the same name, it means that this folder contains the configuration files for the whole project. So you have your settings.py file here, and then your urls.py. Your settings.py files here is what allows us to set settings. So it deals with the configuration as to our database, our templates directory, and then our static files and stuff. We'll go through them. And then we have the urls.py over here. This is URLs. So it gives us the parent directory for our URLs. So we'll also look at this shortly, right? Hope you're okay with this.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. And I'm saying the first thing we did was we imported OS. We imported OS. Well, we use the OS over here. And what we were doing is that I'm saying that from the base directory, we want to add templates to the base directory. Then we came here and then we changed the database. There was a default database in here, which was the DBS SQLite. Now we've changed the database. Now, if we should go back, we realize there should be an error over here. This error over here is saying that the database connector does not exist. It is because the database configuration I've placed over here doesn't exist yet. So we'll have to create it. So with the Postgres setup, you will have your engine, you will have your host. Your host is localhost. You have your user. My user is Postgres. Your user might be Postgres or not. You have your name. Now, the name that I'm using for the database is collector, my port, and then my password, right? So then, if I want to take out that error, I have to go to my Postgres database, come here, and then I create a new database. Then I name the database collector. So I save the database. So I have my database here. Now, because we are dealing with spatial data, the next thing we have to do is to add an extension. So we have our extensions over here. We will add the Postgres extension, so that will be our database will be able to contain spatial data. So we save it. So we have our database set up now. Let's see. Let me run this server again. Let's see if the error still persists. Now you realize that the error is normal. So it has now my Postgres database over here has now connected to the database within my PG admin, my Postgres DB. Right. Okay. Give me a minute. Let me search for this thing. Let's go to this one. Okay, so let me just copy this. Okay, so the next thing we'll be looking at is our static URLs. So I'll explain this. So like I'm saying, these things that I'm changing, they are usually constants. You have to do it almost every Django application that you do. Usually your static routes and your static URLs are going to look like this. So the static route over here is saying that when we go into the base directory, we should see static files. So once we run a particular line of code, a statement, a Python statement, it is going to create these static files for us. Now, once there is a media which is being downloaded, so if we are supposed to create a view or an interface whereby we are saying that, okay, that interface should be able to take in images or files. Those images and files that is going to be uploaded into our application is going to be stored within media. So this media isn't created now, but the moment an upload is made, it is going to be automatically created. The moment we run the statement Python manage.py collect static, these static files is also going to be created as a folder, and then the static files are going to be copied into that folder. Okay. So these are just folders that are supposed to be created to manage our static files, our static files and media. The static files and the media, static files deals with the CSS and then the JS files that we'll be using on our client side or within our projects. So it's more of a front end stuff. And then the media is going to also have files like PDF, images, documents. So I think that's it for the settings of Py. So debug is true for now because you want to be able to debug. So we want our Django application to debug automatically for us to be able to visualize the errors that might pop up within our project. So the next thing we do, we go to the setting, the urls.py. So in here, we have a URL already created. This is the admin. It already comes pre-configured in Django. So the next thing we want to create is we want to create a URL path for this particular app that we are about to create. Now you realize that whenever you access a website, sometimes you use a URL, right? And then the URL opens a page, and then you click on maybe home or about, then it sends you to another page. Now, how this thing works is we are going to do something similar over here. So we are going to set the root URL for our Django application, which is for our application within this Django project. Now we have our application as the collector, right? So basically we say path. Then when we call path, we're saying that it should come with an empty URL for the meantime, and then I call include. What am I including? I'm going to include collector. Going to include collector.urls. So this include hasn't been defined, so I import the include from path. From Django. So I want to import certain things. We learned about modules and packages when we were dealing with Python, and we said that a module is so this is a module. This URL is a path. So a single py file is a module, and then when you have a group of modules within a folder, and then you have an initializer, which usually is the init.py, that becomes a package. So we are accessing the conf module, and then from there we want to import settings. Well, let me just copy this and then just move on. So I just copy and paste this here. So within the urls.py, the changes that I've made so far is by adding include over here. So I'm importing include because I'm using include over here. Otherwise, I'm going to get include is not defined. So I'm calling include from this urls.py module, and it is within Django framework. Now I'm importing the settings, right? So we'll be using the settings soon, and then I'm importing static also. You realize that within our settings.py, we have static over here. So we'll be dealing with them soon. We put this down here. And what we are saying is that if the settings.debug equates to true, then we are adding these URLs, this URL pattern to our urls.py. So I'll demonstrate it later on. Explain it now might confuse you, so I explain it. So we have we'll have these static roots, and then the media roots, and then we'll have our media URL, and then the static URL. So these are paths, they are folders that are going to be created. These folders are going to have our CSS and JS files. And remember that when we're creating, we're learning the HTML and CSS, we're referencing external links, right, into our HTML. So these external links are like they are the parts that allow us to know where we can find these resources, which is our CSS and JS. So these parts are going to be URLs over here, and then the URL pattern we are saying that the static, which is already defined within our settings, is just going to pick them up. So we are done over here. Now, two things that you're supposed to take note of is that when I created this part, and I'm saying this part is the collector, I'm creating my collector.urls over here. Now, when I move into the collector folder, there's no URLs over here, meaning that I have to create the URL. So I come here and then I create a new file. I save this file as urls.py. And I have my URLs created over here. So let me, okay. So let me come back here and then let's talk about the structures. So we've done some basic configurations. Now I want to look at the structure. Now anytime you are working with a Django project, more than not, you are supposed to follow this structure, unless almost at all times you're supposed to follow this structure. What it does is that it allows people who did not start with you in building the application, but later on come to join you in building the application, have some form of ease with navigating around your Django application. So there's a defined structure or a standardized structure that we have to follow. So like I'm saying, we usually have our project folder name, and then the same name over here within the parent folder has access to the configuration files. Then within our app, so for each particular app, when you open it, you have these files over here. So each app becomes an isolated app on its own within the project, and that app comes with an admin.py, an apps.py, models.py, tests.py, URLs. It doesn't come with URLs. We created the URLs because we want to create an isolated URLs for each application. If we decided not to bring this URL.py over here, then it means that we'll come back here and then we'll reference all the URLs that we'll be using in our application over here. But we don't want it to be congested. We want it to be isolated so that we'll be able to know which URLs belong to which applications. So we create the URLs within the individual applications, which is what we have over here, right? Then we have the views. So we remember we created a template file over here. So this template folder is supposed to be created within each application. So we have our collector app. Within this collector app, we create the folder. We come here, we create a new folder. We name it templates. So now we have our app, we have our migration folder, we have our templates folder, and then we have our modules. The next thing we want to create within this app is we want to create a storage place for our static files. And our static files are going to be, like I explained earlier on, our JS and our CSS. So within this app also, we create a new folder, and that new folder is going to be called static. Now within the static, I want to create my application. So within the static, the first thing I reference is I create another folder. So usually with this, it differs. Some people just put the same collector name, which is the name of the app, and some people just go straight forward. There are times that I do both. There are times I create the application name and then I create the folders in there, or there are times I just go straight forward to create the CSS that I need and the folders that I need. I go straight to create the folders that I need, and those folders can be so let's say we'll be creating a folder for our CSS files within this collector. Then we'll be creating another folder for our JavaScript files. Then we'll be creating another folder, say, should we want to use some images. So let's have a look at how the app actually looks like over now. Let's go back to home. We'll go back to our application. So we started with this initial setup. Now we move into the collector app, and then we have a new folder created called static and another folder called templates over here. Now when we move into the static, we have the app name. Then within the app name, we have our CSS folder, our images folder, and then our JS folder. Okay. So let's continue. Now we have something called migrations. We'll get to that, so I wouldn't talk about that now. We'll get to migrations. So I think we are done with the structure for now. So let me explain what these PI files mean. So to go a simple recap again, just to make sure that we are all following, would be we created our app, we dragged our app in here. The first thing that we want to do is to set up our project. To set up our project, we move into the feature collector folder. When we move in there, we are looking at two things more often than not. And those two things that we are going to look at is the settings of PI and then the URLs of PI. We go into the settings of PI, and then we want to add the apps that we have within the project in there. We reference it inside the settings of PI, so that it doesn't throw an error saying that the app that we are using isn't defined. And then we set up our database, and then we set up our static routes and then our media routes also. Then once we are done, we come to the URLs of PI, and then we set up the URLs of PI, and making sure that also the URL or the path for the static folder is also referenced over here, so that the project will be able to automatically go and search for them. Now after creating them, we come to this particular app, because that is what we are dealing with now. We've created an app within our project, and then we want to start the app now. So to start the app, we created a URL for the app over here. We have our views, and then we have our models. So we are going to look at what the views stand for, what the URL stand for, and then what the models stand for. So let me start from the init. So the init is a model, and whenever you run the app, this is the first file that is run. It starts for initialize. So if you want to do any other should you want to do something before your application runs, you have to write that statement in here or that command in here. Then it's going to run before your applications actually run. So this init initializes your whole application. Then this admin.py over here, it allows you to actually set up how you want your admin interface to look like. So maybe we might look at that also. So the app over here is just a configuration for our app, which is this app. That's a configuration. We don't do anything to it. We leave it as it is. We have our models over here. This models.py, what it does is that it allows us to create the blueprint of how our database is going to look like. So we've already created our database. Now we are going to have tables within our database. Now the fields that these tables are going to have are going to be drawn over here. So the moment we draw those fields down here, it is going to be the blueprint that our database is going to follow to draft our tables for us. So the models is used, like the name goes, models. So it's much more of like doing a simulation or modeling of how you want your tables to be. We have the test.py over here. The test.py is used for running tests. So we have something we call test-driven development. So on a basic level or on a low level, usually you want to use a test.py over here, and then write a function which is a test to test your application before it actually builds or you integrate it with the already running application. So if you run your test, you write your test and you run them, and then the test should fail, then you don't want to merge or integrate the new updates or codes that we've written to the already running application, which is healthy. We have the URLs, and I said the URLs of PI is going to contain all our URLs that we want to reference or link up within our our client interface. So when we click on about, the URL that is going to actually handle the about, we are going to define them within the URLs.py. Now the view over here, like the name goes, is saying view, you want to see. So whenever you click on these URLs like the about, the home, what happens is that when you click on it, it sends a request. So what the view does is that the view is made up of functions, and these functions take up a request and then they return a response. So the view allows you to view whatever request that you are making on the client side. So once you click on any URL or a button, it comes to the view, and then the view gets the request, gives you a response, renders it onto your HTML document, and then you can view it on the client side. So now that I've explained them and you know what these modules stand for, we want to start creating something. Okay. So within the view, we have render already imported for us. I think the next thing we want to import, let's just start with the render. So let's come here. So let's say we want to create an application, right? The application we want to create, we are saying it's a collect app. So then the first thing we want to look at is our table, how the database is going to be. Then from there we write a view to manipulate it. So let's come to our models. So we come here, we learned about classes, right? So we create a class over here. We say the classes allows us to be able to build objects. So the classes are like blueprints for building objects. So we are coming to build an object. So what we want to say, what should we call it? Let's just call it collect. Now we are already importing models. So we call the models, and then from the models we call model. So remember when we were dealing with the classes, I spoke about inheritance. So we have a class called model over here, and then we are importing that class from the models, module. So this is a class, and then once we inherit it, it means that all the functions and all the methods that are defined within this class and each attributes are going to be inherited by this class that we are defining over here. So some of the fields that we want to look at would be, let's say, feature type. We want to look at feature type. So we say since feature type is going to be a text, we use model dot. We use character field. Character field over here stands for text or strings. So it always comes with a maximum length. Max length, which we are saying should be equal to, let's just say, should be equal to 50 words. And then it can be null. So we say null should be equal to true. Say null should be equal to true. And then we are saying blank. The form can be blank, so we say blank should be equal to true also. Okay, so from this model that we imported, because I'm saying this field is going to contain text files, I'm using a char field, which is character field. And then the length of the characters that this particular field should be able to take should be 50. This field should be able to take null values, meaning that when the person doesn't enter any feature type or name, you should be able to take it. And then should the form also be blank, it shouldn't show an error on the client side. You should be able to process it.
Sorry, I don't know if this would create any problem later, but length, I think you put H before T.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, it would have been a problem. So we want to look at maybe latitude, and then we want to say models. We want to use a float field. Let's use float field. then let's say you should be able to take now also, so you don't have any issue when the field is now. Well, it should be good. Let's copy the same thing. Let's move it down here. Let's make it long. So now we've created this field over here. Then we count down and we say we want to have string representation of our field. So we call self. Then we are asking it to return. We want to return, let's just say feature name instead of feature type. We want to return self this. Alright, so what is double underscore str double underscore self means is that this stands for a string representation. So usually when you enter a data into your database and then you want to like preview what is entered, it allows, if you want to preview what is entered, if you don't state anything over here, it is either going to give you like come as a query set or something. Yeah, so I want to see the feature name itself, as in like maybe if I enter it, I want to see that okay, I've entered maybe land, or maybe I've entered a sea or a building. I want to see that particular name. I don't want to see maybe query set something. So that's what this string representation does. So when you use this str, it basically stands for string. So whatever you are returning over here should be a string, and this is a string. If what you are returning over here was a foreign key or it was an integer, then it means that you will have to cast a string over this by doing return str. But that's not the case, so they should work for us because it's already a string. Okay, so we've created our models. Now, because these models is in Django alone, and we've merged or integrated our Django with our PostgreSDB, we want to be able to have whatever we've created here show up or pop up within our database. So first, let me go into my database. Let me open my database. And when I come down here, I go to the schema, and then I go to tables. Now the tables I have over here is just a special reference, and I have this special reference system because I added PostGIS. So automatically I can see my table is empty, but now I want to have a table in there. So we come down here, and then so the wrong spelling that I had has shown an error. I saved it. So let me break it and run it again. Saying model isn't defined in Latin, so it shouldn't be model, it should be models. So if you see the URL pattern variable with valid patterns and the pattern is an issue, collector.url home gen feature collector URL does not appear to have any patterns. Okay. So what they are trying to say is I've created these URLs of pi and it doesn't have any URL pattern in there. So do Django, go from Django.urls, one to reports, one to report back. Then we come and say URL patterns should be equal to. Okay, we'll do this. Then let's go identity part. Parts missing to required route and then the view. So let's run this. Now we have our app running and the errors are gone. Okay. Let's come here, let's save this. Let's come to the models. So we are done with the models, so we're going to run migrations. So I just open a new tab and then I move into my virtual environment. what's the virtual environment? Show ANV. Okay, so once I'm in there, I access the manage.py. So I do Python manage.py. I want to make migrations. So I did make migrations and realized that it's saying that it has created model collect, which is this model over here. Once it is the migrations have been created, I have to make it. So making it means that now we want to have the physical representation within our database. So we do Python manage.py. Now we want to migrate. So we are moving the fields that have been created into our DB. So we have collector 001, which stands for our first migration. Be migrated into our DB. Now all these other files that have been migrated are these are files that comes automatically with Django. So Django uses these files in doing a lot of stuff. So you have your over here which handles authentication. So it has created an authentication table for you, content types table for it has created the content types table for you, and then a sessions table for you. You can do more readings into that to see what these do, but we are not looking at them now. I think it's so let's just have a look into our database. So we come here and then we refresh our database, and then we see all the tables showing over here. Now these tables, we see the auth group, they are tables that handle basically authentications and permissions when you come to the Django framework. What we are interested in is our application, which is collect. So it started with our app name. Our app name is collector, and then the table that we are interested in is from the models is the collect table. So you see collector with the collect table, and this is the table that we created within our models. So once we preview the table, we are seeing the feature name, the lat, and then the long. So I want to end here for today. If you have any questions, you can put it out, and then I answer them. Then we can call it successful evening. So the floor is open for questions now.
Question.
Yeah.
I remember you changed the I think default database that came with the creation.
Yeah.
SQLite.
Yeah.
I think you changed it to
I changed it to Postgres.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, so I had wanted to highlight this earlier on. The command line I'm using is Ubuntu terminal. I work with an Ubuntu operating system, so my command line is different. But you are using CMD. Your CMD should do the same thing as the terminal. The only difference is that most of the bash scripts, as in the script that I'll be running in my terminal, might sometimes be different. I might be using like sudo something, but you wouldn't be necessarily doing the same thing on Windows or Mac. Mac also at times allows sudo. Yeah, but basically that's why I was saying you should individually install your virtual environment, and then once you are done, you can follow, because the rest is going to use the same scripts. Whatever I type into my terminal, you should be able to do so within your command prompt or your Mac OS terminal. So to answer your question, it's not the same across all operating systems. They are different, but the codes that I'm using should be able to work on all operating systems. When I started, I was doing some make virtual env. That wouldn't work on yours because, like I said earlier on, I have installed a virtual environment wrapper, and that was how I created my virtual environment. It is a handler that allows you to easily create virtual environments. So you shouldn't use that. You should follow your tutorial. When you followed your tutorial, they allowed you to move into a folder called, I think, Activate. And then when you enter into that folder, a bin or env.env folder also. Then you do your activations. Then you see your virtual environment show. I hope I haven't confused you with lengthy talk, and I hope the explanation I gave sums it up for you. Any other questions? Okay, looks like there are no other questions. So, Ernest, if you are there, I think you can end the class for today.
Okay, thank you very much for this question. I hope we all learned something. With a Django, I know it will be a bit difficult. It looks difficult in the beginning, but the moment you're able to understand the framework, how the codes are structured or how the files are structured, the rest of the things should be straightforward. So try as much as possible to maybe go over this video again when it's being posted and study how the files are structured and how the settings are being done. So like with a setting, for instance, it's that like when you do it is once and for all. There are some lines of codes that anytime you are creating an application, there is no need for you to like memorize those codes. You can just get them, put it in it, get your connection to your DB, and you should be good to go. So you just understand how this structure is. Then I'm sure in the next session when Jed moves into getting the data into the DB and also getting data out of the DB to show on the map and all that, that will make sense. Like it's going to help you understand what he started today. Okay, all right. So by in the interview, if you have any questions during the week, you just post it on the page or our GitHub platform. We have able people among us who would respond to will help you overcome your obstacles. Yeah, so since there are no more questions, we'll end the session for today and we will come back, God willing, Monday. Yeah, so Monday, Jed will continue. Then, so this is a build up. Jed will continue Monday and the following Thursday. Then the following Thursday, if he's unable to finish on Thursday, then the following week he will complete it. Then we are going to bring a guest tutor or a guest instructor. He is going to add up to what Jed will be teaching. So he's bringing React. And I remember somebody asked a question about the front-end language we'll be using. So we'll be learning React with Django, right? So when he is done, Then the final module that we'll be tackling for this whole mentorship program will be the Google Earth Engine, which I'll be taking that. Yeah, so we are almost through with the whole mentorship program. Initially, we planned of 1 month, but from the look of things, we might be using about 3 or 4 months. Yeah, so as we are going along, let's try and practice all that we've learned, or else for the 3 and 4 months that we've spent of sacrifice teaching you guys will go to waste. All right, so thank you, and have a nice evening, a nice afternoon, and good night to those of us in Ghana. All right, bye-bye.